Welcome, everybody. This is Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet. You can find my site at www.lovingkindness.co. And today we're learning the Tanya by Rabbi Schneur Zalman of Liadi. Today is the 19th day of Kisleiv, and it is the day that is known as the Rosh HaShanah of Chassidut. It is the day that is known as the head of the year of Chassidus. And the reason that it is so called is because it is a day of liberation. And of course, since it's a day of liberation for the Alter Rebbe, who we're going to discuss in just a minute, it is also a day of liberation for each one of us. And the day itself holds a certain spiritual factor to it that should release us all of the prisons that we might find ourselves in whatever way, whether it's financial, whether it's marriage, whether it's children, whatever it is. We look for a means to get out of the prison that we find ourselves and be blessed with the things that we are deserving of. Everybody is deserving of. Now, the Alter Rebbe in 1798 was accused by the Tsar of Russia of involving himself in teachings that went against and threatened the Tsar himself. And because of this, the Tsar took him into prison and went through a very detailed interrogation until it eventually emerged 53 days later that the Alter Rebbe was innocent of all charges and he was released. And to this day, because of this event that happened, we celebrate, or the Hasidim celebrate, the 19th of Kisleiv as the Rosh HaShanah of Chassidut. The reason is because the Alter Rebbe saw this, and Chassidus saw this as the day in which heaven itself approved of the writings of the Alter Rebbe, which means to say that up until this point in time, it seems to be that the heavenly forces, the forces that, of course, went against all of Torah, were complaining and again rebelling against this idea that the teachings of Chassidus should continue in the physical world, and they didn't like the way that the Alter Rebbe was being allowed the full rights to teach these secret teachings in the physical world. But it came out that because the Alter Rebbe was freed from the physical prison, that he saw it as the fact that heaven had released him also from the spiritual bondage in which he was, or better yet, in which Chassidus was. Because the thing is like this: when the Torah was given, the Torah originally had, as we know, as it does have, two parts to it, the revealed Torah and the hidden Torah. And throughout the years, the revealed Torah was, of course, taught to everybody. But the hidden Torah was only taught to select few individuals. Years later, when it came to the stage of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the first main rabbi to begin revealing the teachings of Kabbalah, of mysticism. And now we're talking about just about the time of the period after the destruction of the second temple, of the second Beis Hamikdash. Anyway, life carried on as usual, and these teachings were taught from teacher to student and so on and so forth. But the actual teachings of the Zohar, which Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai compiled, were not actually available in any form for the average person. In fact, it was only in the 1200s when the actual text of the Zohar became available, and the average person who could get hold of this text was able to study the Zohar. Again, the tradition continued to be passed down from teacher to student. And then we have another main person involved in this transmission of the Kabbalah. And this was Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal, who lived from 1534 to 1572. And basically what he did, he was one of the main transmitters of the Kabbalistic tradition. And what he did was to take those teachings from the Zohar, and he was to compile a whole system in which one could then understand the teachings of the Zohar. Now, he didn't really do it himself. He taught his pupil, Rabbi Chaim Vital, and Rabbi Chaim Vital compiled all the teachings of his Rebbe, of his teacher, into the work that we have today known as the Kitvei Arizal, in which one will find things like the Eitz Chaim, the Tree of Life, which is the main body and corpus of the teachings of the Ari, as well as the Shmona Sha'arim, the 8 gates, which include things like the secrets of Gilgulim and secrets involved in various kavanot that one has when one davens or one performs various mitzvot, and so on and so forth. We're not discussing all the teachings at this point in time. Anyway, once again, we see that the teachings of the mystical teachings, the Kabbalah, were transmitted from teacher to student again, until it got to a stage where there needed to be, again, some sort of revelation to the world in general, to understand more about these teachings, to make it easier to understand. And the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael ben Eliezer Baal Shem Tov, he came onto the scene. And what he did was he took these deep mystical concepts and he put them into a form which would be easy for the average person to be able to understand. And he transmitted this, and it was wonderful. And he had a student known as Rav Dov Ber of Mesrich, who was known as the Maggid of Mesrich. And the Rav Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mesrich, took over the role of teaching the teachings of Chassidut. So we must imagine now that what's happening in the world is that the flow of the mystical tradition is being passed down from generation to generation. And what's happening is it's becoming easier and easier to understand the mystic tradition. Well, at this point in time, the Alter Rebbe comes onto the scene, and he, of course, was the student of the Maggid of Mesrich. And he began to teach these teachings in quite a unique manner. He concentrated on teaching his teachings based upon Chabad, on the intellect, the Chokhmah, Binah, and Da'as of the Torah, the wisdom, the understanding, and the knowledge of Torah. And he put it into a framework whereby one would focus on the intellectual part of the mystical tradition and thereby connect in an intellectual manner to the mysticism of the Torah itself. This was a very unique approach, because at the time what was happening is that there was another branch of Chassidut which was beginning, and this was called the Chagat Chassidut, which stands for the Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet, the loving kindness, the stern judgment, power, and the beauty, the Tiferet, and these were the emotional aspects. So many Hasidim followed into the direction of the emotional aspect of Chassidut, whereas the Alter Rebbe focused on the Chabad, on the intellect part of the Chassidut, and he began teaching this. But what happened in the meantime is that just as things happen in the physical world, they happen in the spiritual world. Just as things happen in the spiritual world, they also happen in the physical world. So it seems to be that there was a complaint made in heaven that the Alter Rebbe should not be allowed to continue the teachings of Chassidut. And as a result of this, another complaint was made in the physical world that perhaps the Alter Rebbe should be arrested on fabricated charges that he had been teaching teachings that were against the Tsar and that threatened the Tsar. So physically speaking, this is what was taking place. The Tsar was saying, you are teaching things against me. And in heaven, they were saying, we don't allow the spreadings of Chassidus to continue, meaning the forces that rebel against holiness were pushing against that these teachings should come out. They didn't want all of these teachings, which related to the mystic side of Torah, to be revealed in such a way that even the average person would be able to grab hold of them and use them to connect with Hashem, to feel closer to Hashem, and to understand God's mystical side of the Torah. But 53 days later, which is quite fascinating, after his arrest, 53 days later, by no coincidence, we should say that the Tanya itself is composed of 53 chapters. And perhaps it's interesting to point out, but the Alter Rebbe at this point in time was also 53 years old. So what happens is that the Alter Rebbe was now freed 53 days later, and this day was celebrated and is celebrated as a day of freedom, of the release of the permission of the mystical teachings to be taught into the world. It was heaven's way of saying it is time to allow the teachings of the mystic Torah to come out and to be spread out into all parts of the world. And indeed, that is what is happening today, as we see from the Rebbes of Chabad, for example, in particular, who transmitted these teachings faithfully, again, from teacher to student and teacher to student and so on and so forth, until today's times, where the seventh Rebbe really pushed forwards and spread the well springs of Chassidut to all parts of the world. Well, it's not so difficult to see. Anybody who wants to just go online and type in www.chabad.org will clearly see that the teachings of Chabad Chassidut are spreading in a great, in an amazing manner. The well springs are spreading to all parts of the world. Shiurim in Chassidut are available 24/7, with the exception of the fact that we don't look at these things on Shabbos, and they should not be touched on Shabbos. So basically, it's 24/6, or perhaps even 24/5 and 23, however you want to understand what is permissible to go and check out online. Obviously not on Shabbos, but all the teachings are available for everybody all the time. Whenever you want to access these teachings, they're available. You'll see that there are articles of interest. There are also videos teaching so much of Hasidus on their site, as well as, of course, other sites. And then there are the individual people like myself and others who have shiurim online. And this, it makes that the Torah should be spread to all parts of the world as it has never been done before. And that is really our duty. We need to spread the Torah to as far as we can. When the Alter Rebbe was freed, it was a sign that God was saying, and the forces, even the forces against purity, were saying, okay, we allow the spreading of Chassidut to take place. And as a result, it should take place, and it should increase and increase and increase. And of course, this will be the ultimate harbinger. This will cause that Mashiach will be revealed, because through the mystical side of Torah and God's oneness of creation will be revealed to the world. The unity of God will be revealed to the world, and this in itself will heighten the speed that Mashiach will, of course, reveal himself immediately. Now, for those people who are interested in knowing how does the Chassidut relate to the Kabbalah, I like to tell a story. Well, we know that the Eitz Chaim, as we said before, written by the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, the Eitz Chaim is the core text. Well, it once happened that the story is told that Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich, who is one of the great Mekubalim, is one of the Kabbalists of today's generation, a very great man who's written dozens of books. And one needs to just spend a few moments looking through some of his books to realize that the Torah that he is speaking about flows and flows and flows, and is filled with purity, goodness, and mystical material. It's just unbelievable to see how much he has written in his lifetime. And he is one of the Roshei Yeshivas. He's one of the head of the yeshiva of the Shar Shamayim Yeshiva in Yerushalayim, the Kabbalistic yeshiva. So it once happened with him, he tells a story that he found it difficult to understand how it was that the Eitz Chaim, which was written by the Arizal, who is said to be Ashkenazi, meaning that his father was Ashkenazi, his mother was Sephardi, and so many people say that because he was brought up by his uncle, who was the brother of his mother on the Sephardi side, that maybe he was Sephardi. But they called him the Arizal Ha'eloki Rabbi Yitzchak, but they also said Ha'ashkenazi Rabbi Yitzchak, and that's what the word Ari stands for, Ashkenazi Rabbi Yitzchak, because he was Ashkenazi. But of course, the Sephardim will say that he was Sephardi, and that's all very well and good. But anyway, the point being is that Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich was quite surprised that the Eitz Chaim, which is written by this Ashkenazi rabbi, happens to be that there are no Ashkenazi commentators on the Eitz Chaim, only Sephardi commentators. And this is pretty fascinating, because where are all the Ashkenazi commentators? It doesn't seem to make sense. We have a strange thing in the Torah. Somebody opens up a Shulchan Aruch written by a Sephardi rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Karo, Sephardi Posek, the great Rabbi Yosef Karo. And when we look at the commentaries as it is printed in an average Shulchan Aruch, one will see that there are two main commentaries, the Shach and the Taz, both of whom are Ashkenazi commentators. We have the Ashkenazi commentators commentating on the Sephardi text. And then when it comes to the Eitz Chaim, which is the Ashkenazi text, we see that only the Sephardi rabbis are commentating on the Eitz Chaim. For example, we see the Sadeh, Rabbi Shaul Dvik, known as the Sadeh, and we also see, for example, Rav Yehuda Petaya. He commentates on the Eitz Chaim, but there are no Ashkenazi commentators. So Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich went once to speak to a particular chassid of Munkach, and he was a very great man, Rabbi David Klein, I think his name was. And he went to ask him, and he said, well, he found it very difficult to understand how it can be that there aren't any Ashkenazi commentators on the Eitz Chaim. And he replied, and he said to him, are you crazy? He said, Chassidut, Chassidut itself is the commentary on the Eitz Chaim. That was his answer. When we study a book of Hasidic material, what we are really looking at is the Ashkenazi rabbi who is making a commentary on the text of the Eitz Chaim, which means to say that every Hasidic text that we look at is in fact a commentary on the most basic and deepest text in general on the Kabbalistic tradition, meaning the Eitz Chaim, which teaches us the whole flow of all the worlds as God created to get to this physical world. There were many worlds that were created before it, and then the physical world was revealed. All of the texts that we're looking at are really commentaries on this book of the Eitz Chaim, and therefore Chassidut is really just another word for explaining the Kabbalistic tradition as it is put into an easy form, so that we ourselves as simple people can read it and understand it. Now we come to the Tanya, which of course is considered the Bible of Chabad Chassidut, and we've already studied 2 chapters. We're now on chapter 3. We're looking at the Chabad.org site, where the Tanya is hosted over there, and it is made available by the Kahut Publication Society so that everybody can look at it free of charge, although you can go out and buy the text in the original form. And we have permission to make use of it in this way, as I'm doing right now, and letting people know that I do have permission to read from it online on the video, and there are no problems involved. Now, the story of the Tanya up until chapter 3 has been a fascinating one. And we must remember that everything flows in a specific order, which means to say that there's a story. Just like with the Eitz Chaim, just like with the Otzrot Chaim, all of these Kabbalistic works that discuss the creations of all the worlds that existed up until our world today has a story to it, a storyline, which means to say a flow of events that take place from the first point until the second to the third to the fourth. There's a flow, there's a story that's taking place. The Tanya is also written in a way that there's a story taking place, and we have to follow the story, which means to say if we jump in on chapter 3 and we've missed chapter 1 and 2, we're out of the story. It's like watching a movie, and instead of watching the beginning part of the movie, one steps into the movie after 15 or 20 minutes, and one hopes to be able to understand what the movie is all about. So we're going to miss the end of the movie, because by the time we get to the end, we'll wonder, is there something that we've been missing that we perhaps didn't understand before, which would have contributed to understanding the full picture of the movie? So here we are in chapter 3, and it's imperative really that we have flowed from chapter 1 and chapter 2, and we move into chapter 3. The summary, in very brief, is that chapter 1 discussed the fact that the soul is coming into the body. And when the soul comes into the body, God says, or the angel says to it, and causes it to swear an oath that it should become a tzaddik, and if not a tzaddik, at least it shouldn't be a rasha. And then chapter 1 dealt with all aspects of what the soul is going to basically experience in terms of the fact that it could end up becoming a rasha, and what exactly is the rasha, and how does he deal with that? So we learned about the rasha, the evil aspect of what a person could be. Again, these are just words that are used to describe. It doesn't literally mean that the person is a murderer or a rapist or a thief or anything like that. It's simply a word to classify that the category of soul is one that it needs a lot of repair on it. The tzaddik, on the other hand, is a soul that is pretty much repaired, and all that he has to do is to convert the darkness into light. That is his duty. The duty of the rasha or the Beinoni is to subjugate the bad, because he doesn't have the power to know how to turn the bad into good. But the tzaddik, he knows how to turn the bad into good. So chapter 1 dealt with this issue of understanding the different levels of what's called the rasha, what's called the tzaddik, etc. When we got to chapter 2, we now started speaking about in chapter 1, we also spoke about the soul, which was the animalistic soul, and how the animalistic soul finds itself in the evil person, and how it can cause a person to collapse. There are different aspects in a person's body through this animalistic soul that manifest in a negative way. Things like anger, things like laziness, things like desire, which are in and of themselves very bad traits unless one knows how to use them correctly in the service of God. In chapter 2, we dealt with the godly soul. And we spoke about how the godly soul consists of, for example, a nefesh, a ruach, and a neshama, the different layers to the godly soul. And now, as he progresses into chapter 3, he's going to detail for us more about what this soul really consists of, and therefore how we have to use the soul in the right way in order to connect with Hashem and to do good in this world. And that's basically where we are at in our summary, and that is where we find ourselves here in chapter 3, starting from the beginning over here. The Alter Rebbe says the following: V'hine, behold, Kol bechina umadrega mishalosh elu. Every aspect and level of these three that we're speaking about, we spoke about in chapter 2, which I just summarized very briefly. Nefesh, ruach, uneshama. These are the three levels which correspond to the soul, the spirit, and then the powerful part of the soul. All these three levels exist within a person. Klula me'ese bechinot. Each one of these three levels consists of 10 different aspects. This is Keneged Ese Sefirot Elionot Shenishtalshu Mehen. This is corresponding to the 10 Sefirot, the 10 supernal Sefirot, which they're going to come from. Which means to say that in the beginning of creation, when God created the world, everything began with lights and vessels. And basically, originally, the light was extremely powerful. God had to make a vacuum in creation in order to make a place for the existence of creation. And it was in this vacuum that he was going to place his light. But the light was still too bright. And he had to make a manner, a way of bringing the light into existence that wouldn't completely overwhelm creation. Just like it is impossible for a person to look at the sun, because if he looks at the sun, he'll go blind. It serves the opposite intention. The sun is there to allow us to see. But if we look at the sun with our eyes and we don't shield it, we don't shield the eyes, we will go blind. Now, this is the same thing with the revelation of Hashem. If Hashem would reveal him, many people say, oh, if God would reveal himself to me, then I would be observant. Then I would do the right thing. But the catch is like this. It's kind of like saying, well, if the sun will shine in my eyes so that I can see, then I will see. But he won't see, because the moment that he looks at the sun, he turns blind. If God would reveal himself in a manner that would be completely himself in revelation, then of course we would all expire. So God set up a system in order to reveal himself so that we don't expire, which means to say there is a revelation and then there is a contraction of the revelation, or a barrier that prevents creation from seeing God as he wants to be revealed, which means to say that God can only reveal himself in a minimalistic aspect so that we aren't wiped out completely from all of creation and revert back to our original selves as souls, as part of God. Now we want to be, because God wants us to be this way. He wants us to be souls in bodies where we experience ourselves and we have free choice to do what we want to. He does not want us to experience soul life. If he wanted us to experience soul life, he would never have created a physical world. He wants us to experience soul life as it manifests itself in a physical body, which gives us the opportunity to experience ourselves as individual souls, as opposed to being a part of God. Yet at the same time, we are certainly a part of God. And not only that, we cannot change ourselves from being that part of God. As we spoke about in chapter 2, a soul descends into this world through the thoughts of the parents at the time of conception and how the parents conduct themselves in terms of sexual purity. But no matter what, when the soul comes down into the world, even if the parents had the worst of thoughts, the soul that comes into the body is still the same soul. It is only that there is a garment that surrounds the body that is created and causes an effect onto the soul when it is in this world. So the thing about this now is that we as souls experience life in the physical body because God is not overwhelming us with his light. How did he do this? Well, he set up a path of light in the creation, in the cosmos, in a spiritual aspect. We only say it in physical terms, but the reality is none of this took place in a physical aspect. Everything is spiritual. He created a certain line where the light would go through. But even in this line, the light was still too powerful for all of creation to feel and experience. We would all be wiped out if we experienced the light there. So what he did is he began to make certain apertures of this line in a manner that looked like a man. And just as a man has different apertures on his body, which allow him to interact with the world, he has two eyes, he has two nostrils, he has two ears, he has a mouth. These are all apertures on the body. And also he has apertures even on the skin. And this is where the hairs come out from. And all of these things are really revelations, either going outwards or penetrating inwards, depending on how we look at how that particular aperture functions. And what God did was he allowed his light to spread out through these apertures. But even then, the light would still be too strong for us to accept. The light was still too powerful, never mind the original light. But even as it came through the apertures, it was too powerful. So ultimately what God does is he causes the light to come out through the mouth. And when the light comes out through the mouth, ultimately it comes out through the ears, and it comes out through the nose, and it comes out through the mouth. And a story happens whereby even at that point in time, on the lowest level, when the light comes out through this aperture, the vessel is not strong enough to hold the light. And so as a result of that, the light shatters the vessel, and then what happens is the light returns back into this original form that it was, and then ultimately, thank goodness, the light finally comes out through this man. Let's call it man, inverted commas, so that we can understand the concept. It comes out through the eyes, and as the light comes out, it finally reaches a point where it will be able to be rectified completely without bursting the vessels yet again. Now, when this light comes out, it manifests itself ultimately in the formation of these 10 Sefirot, these 10 powers of the soul. And this is what we're speaking about. There are 10 powers of existence that God uses in order to create and do things in the world. We could call them tools if we wanted to, or forces, or creation, or energies, or powers. Just like it is, for example, that if one takes water and one puts water into different colored glasses. So we say that the water is exactly the same, but it's the color of the glasses that changes the nature of what the water really is. And one person sees the water as being green in the green glass, and then another person says, if you take that same water, put it into the red glass, it looks red. So the light of God is manifesting itself into these kalim, into these vessels, and as a result of the powers, the different colors of the lights, in other words, the vessels, so the light is able to express itself in a certain way. And in total, there are 10 soul powers, which allow us to do various things, corresponding ultimately to the 10 original soul powers that were at the time of creation. So if we take a look over here, we see that the 3 levels over here, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, are divided up. Keneged Eses Sefirot, Elionot, Shinishtalshelu Mehem. We have the 10 corresponding to the 10 supernal Sefirot, which come out from them. Hanechlakot Lishtayim, and they are divided into 2 general categories. Shehain Shalosh Imot v'Sheva Kefulot. Now these 10 Sefirot that we're speaking about correspond in 2 different ways to two things. 3 imot, 3 mothers, v'sheva kefulot, and 7 doubles. The 3 mothers, 3 of the Sefirot are termed mothers, for they are the source and root of the other 7 Sefirot, as a mother is the source of her offspring. And then we have the 7 doubles, the 7 divine attributes called doubles, inasmuch as each of the emotional attributes manifests itself in a 2-fold manner, as shall be presently explained. Now, this means to say the following. We have 10 Sefirot, 10 soul powers. We said before that we speak about the Chassidut of Chabad Chassidut. This is because we speak about the three highest of these powers, called Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'as. And then we speak about 7 lower powers, which are known as the Midot. The top powers are called the Seichel, which means the mind, the brain. And then we talk about the 7 lower Sefirot, and they are called the Midot, the attributes. Another word to describe the attributes is the 7 doubles. We can also speak about the 3 mothers as the 3 intellectual powers, and we can speak about the 7 doubles, which are really the 7 Midot. Why are they called mothers? Because they give birth to something. Why are they called doubles? Because the Midot can exert themselves in 2 different manifestations. For example, if we take a midah such as Chesed, which is one of the Sefirot, we can see that Chesed in and of itself can be good or it can be bad. Depending on how we use Chesed, Chesed can manifest itself as good or it can manifest itself as bad. Let's give an example. If I give somebody who needs a bed, I buy him a bed, I have used Chesed for the good. On the other hand, what about if I say there's a child who is crying and would like a triple or quadruple or a 6-spoon ice cream? Take 6 spoons of ice cream and put the ice cream one atop the other. But I'm a very kind person, so I go off to the ice cream seller and I purchase the 6-spooned ice cream for the child who's crying, who wants the ice cream. See, over here, we're using Chesed for the bad, because the child will get sick, the child's teeth will be damaged, and more things can happen as a result of my kindness, which is actually being used incorrectly. Now, one of the other Sefirot, which is a double, is, for example, the Sefirah of Gevurah, which stands for strength. Strength can be positive or it can be negative. I can take strength and use it to protect somebody. That's one aspect. It's good because I've used it to protect somebody. Or I could use strength in order to beat somebody up, God forbid. I can use the strength as I want to. That is why the midot are called doubles, because ultimately we can use them for one thing, the same midah we can use for good and we can use for bad. Let us see more about it. So we have the following: Pirush, Chokhmah, Bina, V'da'as. We have wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. These are the 3 imot. V'shivas yemei binyan. And then we have the 7 days of the building, or the 7 days of creation, which is Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. These are the 7 Sefirot, which are the Kefulot. You see over here the translation: Chesed is kindness, Gevurah is severity, Tiferet is beauty, and so on. The other 4 being Netzach, which is endurance, Hod, splendor, Yesod, foundation, and Malchus, which is royalty. These 7 attributes are known as the 7 days of creation, for it was through these 7 attributes that God created the world. Each day's creation came about through a particular attribute. During the first day, Chesed was dominant. The second day, Gevurah, and so on. And these attributes that we're learning about now are actually a part of each one of us. And what the Alter Rebbe is coming to teach us is that we need to learn how to use these attributes correctly so that we can serve God in the best way. And not only that, but we can become like God in the sense that when we use these attributes in the same way that God manifests the attributes in ways of goodness, we become likened to God himself. And so the point of the Tanya was this: let me tell you a story, said the Bala Tanya. First, you should know you came into this world as a soul and a body. Second, you should know, generally speaking, you have 2 parts to your soul. You have an animalistic part and a godly part. Within your soul, you should know that you've got 3 main levels: the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. And what you also need to know is that the soul is composed of these 10 aspects. Now, what you need to do is to take everything that you've got and use it in order to serve Hashem in the best possible way. Know yourself. Know the tools that you have. Know the vessels that you have. Know all about yourself so that you can serve God in the best possible manner. V'kach b'nefesh ha'adam. So too with regards to the soul of a person, shenechleket l'shtayim, that it is divided into two, seichel u'midas. We've got the intelligence, the brains, and we've got the midot, which are the attributes. Now, many people have heard, if you've been around yeshivish people, you hear all the time, you need to improve your midot, they say. You need to improve your midot. What does it mean to improve one's midot? Midot refer to attributes. What are people really saying when they say improve your midot? They're saying you need to improve the characteristics that you have, that you're made up of. What does it mean? It means improve your chesed. It means improve your gevura, your tiferet, your netzachot, your sod and malchut. That's as simple as that. Improve it. What does it mean? Because on chesed, we said we have a spectrum from a person who gives correctly because somebody needs something and he gives according to what the person needs. He gives correctly. And in the other side of the spectrum, we have a person who gives for the sake of giving. Who cares who he hurts in the process? Who cares that he overwhelmed somebody with such gifts that the person felt so terrible he couldn't even take it. He couldn't deal with it. The gifts were too much. And if the gifts weren't too much, perhaps they were damaging to him. But the person who was giving felt that he was doing the right thing. He's giving one gift after the other. And the next thing you know, the recipient says, but I don't want that. I don't need that. And the giver says, but I want to give it to you. I want you to have everything. And the recipient says, but that's not what I want. And the giver becomes so overwhelming in his giving that his giving is no longer positive. It is negative. We need to improve our midot. What else corresponds to midot? Things such as anger, things such as desire, things such as laziness, etc. These are also midot, which means what? Don't become lazy. Do things. Be active. Keep yourself going. Don't become too much of a desirous person. Don't walk around and think everything that you see is something you must have. The latest phone comes out, I must have it. The latest this comes out, I must have it. The latest that comes out, I must have it. Everything that's new, I have to have. Desire after desire. Now I need this. Now I need that. A person can't stop himself. He needs to improve his midot. What about anger? Sometimes there is a place for anger. But if the person becomes overwhelming in his anger, that everything becomes to him irritating, that he has to become angry with, so we say to him, improve your midot. You shouldn't be so angry all the time. You need to hold back. There's a time for anger. One sees the child about to, God forbid, put his fingers into an electric socket. We say, stop, don't do that. Don't do that, my child. The child bursts out crying. But the gevura, or the aspect of anger that is showing the child, is not negative. The aspect of anger is positive. But if we're just shouting at people all the time because we're angry at them, then at that point in time, we need to improve our midot. So this is what we're talking about. Seichel umidot, the brains and the attributes. Just as the 10 supernal Sefirot are divided into two categories, so too with the human soul and its 10 faculties, they are divided into two general categories, Seichel and Midot, emotional attributes. HaSeichel kolel chokhmah bina v'da'as. So the Seichel, which is the intelligence, includes the chokhmah bina da'as, and we see over there the first three letters is Chet, Beit, Dalet, Chabad. The intelligence is the Chabad. V'hamidas, and regarding these attributes, meaning the emotional side of how we deal with life as opposed to the intellectual side, Hein ahavas Hashem, this refers to the love of Hashem, upachado, and fearing him, v'yiraso, and again another word, to fear him, ulefaro, and glorify him. These are the different areas that we need to understand. We need to work on the intelligence. We need to get our brains working correctly. And then we need to refine also the emotional side. So therefore, the 10 Sefirot divide into two sections. One, we need to work on our intelligence. How do we work on intelligence? Study more Torah. Study a work of Chassidut to see the beauty of God's creation and Torah. Study a book of Musar and learn how to work on one's midot, as simple as that. Study works of ethics, study the Chumash, study the Halakha, to know what to do. What must I do? I need to study Halakha. However, that's not good enough. Now what we need is the knowledge that we attain has to move through our system in order that it expresses itself correctly through the emotions in every interaction that we're involved in. All of these things take a lifetime of work. Nobody says it's going to be easy. But the soul is put into this world in order to achieve this goal. This is where the Tanya is beginning from. You're put into this world, you have to swear an oath about what you're going to do and achieve, and you need to get on with your life for 70 years, 80 years, and 120 years in order to accomplish this goal. Don't expect that it's going to happen overnight. It might take 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and it might take longer. But that is the duty that what we have to do. Love corresponds to chesed, as they are respectively, the internal, i.e. emotional, and external, i.e. practical aspects of the same trait. The dread and awe of God corresponds to gevurah, as they are its inner aspect. So too, the glorification of Him corresponds to tiferet. So this is where we're up to. We're going to stop here on the Tanya for today. We're going to carry on with another shiur, learning the Ramchal, in just a few moments. So at this point in time, just a short summary where we've got to today. We spoke a little bit about the special day of the 19th day of Kisleiv, when Alter Rebbe was freed from his incarceration in Russia due to the fact that on trumped-up charges that he was teaching matters that were going against threatening the Tsar. He remained in jail for 53 days. He wrote Tanya, which corresponds to 53 chapters, and he himself was 53 years old. And then we continued and we learned a little bit about chapter 3. We did a summary of chapter 1 and 2. We moved to chapter 3, and chapter 3 speaks about this idea that when we learn more about the soul, we must know that the nefesh, ruach, and neshama have within them, corresponding to them, 10 faculties within the soul. And these are the faculties that we work with on a daily basis in order to do what we need to do, to love Hashem, to fear Hashem, to do the mitzvot, to stay away from the aveirot, to do what we need to do, to get our minds in order and study Torah, to do what we need to do. And it expresses itself ultimately through the emotions, which is our body, in the way that we do something. So I thank you very much for joining me for this shiur. I'm Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, www.lovingkindness.co. And I thank you for joining me and watching this video, or taking part, of course, in the class live. And you're welcome to join. Just send me an email or be in touch. In any case, I'd be delighted to hear from you and be in touch with you. If you've enjoyed this video, I ask you please to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and to it's click on the like button, click on the subscribe button, make sure you're notified, and click on the bell so that every time a new video comes out, you'll be notified that I have uploaded a new video. And I look forward to being in touch with everybody. So for now, I say thanks for joining me, and I wish you everything of the best. Shalom, shalom, all the best, keep well. Bye-bye.